Welcome to the BNI Knox podcast with your host, Andy Brassfield, and we have on the line with us today, Georgia McDonald. And Georgia, we're so happy to have you with us today. Now, Georgia is a member of the Rainmakers chapter, and she's also a director consultant, and Georgia's business is Studio GEO, which is a hair salon. But I get the feeling that there's more to it than just hair. You can tell us about that in a minute. Georgia is married to Jim. They are like me. They have a whole basketball team full of kids. And Georgia, I've known Georgia now for a number of years because we were both members in the NRG chapter. And one of the cool things about Georgia is her Greek heritage. And so they're into Greek dancing, and we have seen her children perform at the Greek festival that they do here in Knoxville in years past. So that's always cool. Something no one knows about her. She's a fashion designer and got chased by pimps. And is alive to tell the story. So,
Yes,
welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah. So, you do this thing. You've always done it as long as I've ever known you. At BNI meetings. Tell us about it and explain what it is.
Okay, so I say Opa. So when I get up, I get up and the first thing that comes out of my mouth is Opa, and everybody else responds back with Opa. So where that stemmed from was, my very early days of BNI. I was extremely shy. I was so scared to talk publicly. I remember my heart wanting to come out of my chest. So about a month and a half into BNI, I went to a Greek wedding. And so I was in that spirit. Like, it's hard when you leave a Greek wedding. It doesn't leave, your spirit right away. So I remember going, you know what? I think I'm just going to get up and say, Opa. I had gotten a little bit more confident. And so sure enough, I did it. I took the chance. I did it. And, and a couple of people responded. And I said, I'm in wedding mode. I had a really good weekend. And, and then I asked for my ask. Well, I decided to say it again and to say it again. And I did. And I was like, you know what? I think this works for me. And so people remember me as the Opa girl if they don't always remember my name. And I've just stuck with it all along. And it's made me stick out as to who I am. So I've kept it.
Yeah. So I mean, this goes to culture. And, we've talked before in BNI trainings and at roundtables about culture eats strategy for breakfast. Now, that's something that I've learned from listening to Ivan Meisner, the founder of BNI. It's not it's another thing that's not an Andy Brassfield original. I'm always borrowing stuff that I hear from other people, and this sets a culture. I see it in two distinct channels, and the one channel is the culture of the chapter. So when you decided to try this OPA thing, and did you say what it means?
No, I didn't. It's just in the moment of having fun. It's like saying hooray or yippee, or it's an expression,
okay.
And sometimes like if somebody breaks a glass to you, you're like, Opa, it's an expression of having a good time, really.
Okay. All right. Well, I never really remembered exactly what it meant, but I know I've said it, Lord knows how many times, with you. And that goes to the chapter culture that one member can influence the whole chapter. And, it's not like we want to encourage every member to have something that requires a response verbal, from the whole chapter. I think that probably would be overboard if every member did that. But every member can and should stand apart.
Mm-hmm.
They should be memorable. Okay?
Absolutely.
And there's so many different ways to do that. I know I've referenced this before, but I can't forget the financial advisor that was in the Power Team chapter for a number of years. And he had this crazy thing where he would do his weekly presentation while he was running around the room, high-fiving all the members.
I remember that. Yep, it was fun.
It was crazy. It was like, what? What is he doing? But here we are, still talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
You see, it was memorable. Okay, so again, we don't want to turn BNI meetings into circuses or into some sort of a party, right? Because this is business. We are professional.
Correct.
And what fits you doesn't fit me, and what fit for the financial advisor running around the room, that won't fit for hardly anybody else, but there are ways that our members can establish a culture, both in their chapter and then for themselves. That's where I was going when I said there's two channels where, of culture I was thinking about. The one is it does liven up a chapter, especially if there's something that's fun or humorous.
Yes.
It'll affect the culture of the chapter in a way that is building energy and getting positive energy flowing in the room. And so that's one of the first things about Georgia. She come into our chapter and stood up and said "Opa," and I'm like, what the heck does that mean? Yeah. But that's part of that's you. That's you. So tell me a little bit about your business. Studio GEO is the name of your business.
Yes.
Like I said, I know a little bit about it, but tell me and tell our listeners about your business a little bit.
Sure. So I cut hair. I color hair. I do more though than just hair. So I service men, I service women, and I service children. I went to school and became a cosmetologist, and that gave me the access of not just touching hair, but touching skin as well. So that if I wanted to do, a facial, I could do a facial on someone. And then I also decided to kind of up my game a little bit, and I went to the barbering program so I can get my barbering, under my belt. I just need to finish my my licensing. I just have to go do two things with the state so that I actually can shave men as well. So
neat.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I just said neat.
Oh, you said neat. Oh, okay. So I generally, primarily, what I love and what makes my salon, I'm just me, myself, and I in a studio at Elite Suites. We all have our own little shops. And so we can close our door and do what we need to, but we don't have to also be alone. So that's the unique aspect of where I work. But I love the products I use make my job great. So when you walk into my salon, it will never smell like a chemically based salon. I don't do perms because I'm allergic to them. My throat burns, so that's something I don't service. But generally, I just love meeting the person's needs. So do they need a nice short haircut? Great. Do they need long haircut with layers? Fantastic. Do you have a kid that cannot sit still? My background is also early childhood education. So I'm able to talk to kids and help them understand the process so they're not like, fidgety when I don't need them to be. I just explain to them, do you want a good haircut or do you want a bad haircut? And all of them are like, I want a good haircut. So by me walking them through the process, they're more likely to pay attention and listen. And, if they have to move, I tell them how to move. They can tell me just to stop. So I tend to be good with kids. And that's a positive for a lot of, parents. Not everybody can deal with kids, and a lot of people don't want to. And then, of course, I love doing updos. I've been working on this one girl who's a model. She's trying to get her modeling book put together, and that's been quite some fun. We've, done updos and crazy do's and slick do's, and the creativity. I love being creative, so my creativity flows even more when I get a chance to do something like that. The other thing too that I cater to is people who work late. A lot of times when they go get a haircut, the shop is closed. So I tend to cater to people who want to come get a haircut or a hair color after hours. So it's not uncommon for me to be at work sometimes till midnight, depending on the service we're doing.
Wow.
Yes.
That is late. So again, using the term unique selling proposition, I think that is definitely one. That your schedule is flexible enough that you can work when your clients need you. Now, tell me about your BNI experience. How long have you been a BNI member?
Boy, I think at least 6 years, going on 7, if I'm correct. So I came in, I had a different business at the time, and I'm new to Knoxville. I didn't grow up in Knoxville. So I just knew people that I went to church with. And when I got into the other business, I didn't know how to connect. And I had a friend that had been in BNI for the same thing. And she's like, Georgia, if you want to grow this business, you got to get into BNI.
Yeah.
And so the doors opened, and I came to BNI, and boy, did it not only teach me how to grow my business, it really taught me how to be the best me. I had so many things to learn that I had not learned them before. So it was quite an aha moment, to be not only a part of a community that helps you grow your business, but helps you grow personally. So, yeah, and then I knew when I went back to go to my cosmetology school, when I came out of that, I said, oh, I know the way to grow my business again. I need BNI.
How's that working out?
It's working out great. Because of
Good.
BNI, I think I'm like 80 to 85% of my business stems from BNI and its referrals.
Cool. 80 to 85%?
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Now, I know I've already made mention that you and I were in the NRG chapter together, so I kind of have a little bit of insider information. And there's something that I've heard you talk about in the past that I wanted to ask you about here, because I think it'll bring value to our members. And that's the story behind you visiting a chapter or maybe 2 chapters out of state. And I really wanted to hear that story again.
Sure.
Tell me about it.
Okay, so when I recognize that we are, international, I've decided that whenever I go travel anywhere, if I can get a chance to go visit a very successful chapter, I make it work. So my first one, I went to Vancouver, my hometown, and I was like, "Ooh, let me see what BNI has to offer here." And so I went and I visited. It was a 55 member chapter. And I remember I was a DC at the time too. So I went in and I just introduced who I was. I don't remember if there was a fee for there, but it was very, very eye-opening. It was a $4 million chapter, 55 members. They were following the system, and it was interesting to watch because I had heard about bigger chapters,
Yeah.
So they gave me a little snippet to talk. That was interesting too. I wasn't expecting that. And, I filled that need of visiting Vancouver. So there was another time though, my husband and I went to California. He had a job interview. And I was like, ooh, let me see what chapters are in California in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so I looked, and I went to actually visit a smaller chapter. And that day they had moved their chapter meeting to a location I was not aware of, and I missed it. So I went back and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go visit that big chapter that I should have visited from the beginning. So I headed north. I went to that chapter, and it was 72 members. And I was shocked. I'm like, oh my goodness. So I walk in, they had a process, and the way they greeted their guests, I had to pay $20 to be a guest because that's what they charged all their guests. I was like, wow. And it didn't matter if I was a DC or not. They treated me just like a visitor. I sat down. I didn't say a word. They connected me with the right people in the room. I remember being a U shape. They had great breakfast, but there's a few things that impressed me in that time, like in my visit. They were 72 members. I think there was about 15 to 17 visitors. They only added 30 minutes to their meeting. Everybody had a 25-second ask. And at the 20-second mark, the VP held up a sign that said 5 seconds. So it was wrap it up time. And there was only one member that went over that in the entire thing. It was this man, and I don't remember exactly what he did, but he did not care. And it was obvious he was the only one. So that was interesting. But what also impressed me was when they stood up to say who they were, especially in the beginning when the introductions were made. Every member that had some kind of a role stood up, said their name, what they did, and if they were visitor host, what they did for visitor host, or if they were in membership committee, what was their role. And they went around the room and they stayed standing. And I still remember them standing and where they were standing, but I really remember the event planner because I'm like, wow, this chapter, it is so important to have events and one-to-ones, because in that 25 seconds, there was no room for fluff. There was no room for that filler. It was a clear ask for your business. Yeah. So it was, and it had 3 10-minute presentations. So it was a huge eye opener, and I could now relate to, be specific, because I still remember some of their asks to today from back then. It was like 40 years ago. Yes.
That's incredible. I'm kind of floored by the idea that there were 72 members and roughly 15 visitors, 87 people. Now, we've had, a couple of occasions here in the Knoxville region where we had some large events. One of the most recent was the event we did at Rainmakers. I believe it was a Visitors Day last year, and there were 99 people in the room. And man,
Correct.
it was awesome, but it was crazy, a little overwhelming. So a couple of things that intrigue me about this idea of a large chapter is I've had members tell me in the past that they don't want their chapter to be large.
Interesting.
I've had people say things like 35 is as big as we want to go. So what's your take on that? Is there truly a benefit to having a larger chapter versus a smaller chapter, or the other way around?
From my experience after visiting and seeing, it is definitely beneficial to be a larger group. So they stayed connected with their one-to-ones and their events, and you could tell they were still a tight group. So capping ourselves off at a 35 number, I think it's because of limited experience. You don't know what you don't know if you've never experienced it. But stepping outside and seeing that, it was really an eye-opener, because I remember being told, at a big chapter with 70 plus members, this is what you're going to see. Well, until you feel it, you don't understand it. And I think it's beneficial because you have more referral sources, you have more people you can, connect other people to. So your resources just grows a bigger variety to help others.
Do you think people make more money in a larger chapter than they do in a smaller chapter?
Oh yeah, absolutely, because you have more options. So you can't, say for example, you can only help half the people in your chapter. Well, if you have 70 members, half is 45. If you have 30 members, half is 15. So of course the money will be, a lot bigger in a bigger chapter.
Yeah.
The connections, the people they know, there's more people. So by default, you'll make more money.
Do you think it's possible to have a larger chapter like that in our area, in the Knoxville region?
Yes, I think we can do it, because I saw that on when I looked at all their chapters, they ranged anywhere from a 17-member chapter to the 72-member chapter. So it's not like not every chapter was 72 members.
Yeah.
So to say that area has, only that size, no, they had a variety. So I feel we have enough businesses and different types of businesses to be able to have chapters that size.
So when you're building your chapter and say you want to enlarge your chapter, and I'm not trying to say that every chapter should aspire to 70 members. I think that it's better to set some goals that are reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the largest chapters that we have in our region are between 35 and 40 members at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And for any of those chapters to say, let's go for 70 or let's go for 75, let's set some new records, that would be ambitious and I'd love to see it, but I think it'd probably be more realistic to set a goal of let's break the zeros, let's break 40, then let's break 50,
Mm-hmm.
then let's break 60, and do it that way. But I think that that one of the things that has kind of slowed down some of the growth at some of our chapters
Mm-hmm.
is potentially category hogs. Is it okay to say that?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Members who stand up and rattle off all these things that they do
Mm-hmm.
in their business. How is that hurting a chapter, and how does that hurt their business when they talk about all these different things that their company can do?
Well, first of all, it hurts their credibility a little bit because they look like they want all the business. And so instead of educating the members of their chapter who they're looking to do business with in the part that's giving them the most amount of money, they're trying to grab at anything they can, is what it, to me, comes across, So part of that's a little bit of education, educating them as they come in. Listen, this is what it really means. This is why we're doing, why we want you to do it this way. So two things, like you get that, like you said, category hog, right? They might not recognize it in the beginning. So it hurts their business because then people are like, oh, you're one of them. You're one of those that just want it all, but doesn't necessarily want to share. That's what it comes across. And of course, their intent is, I can help you with all, but all, as we know, means nothing at all, right? So being more specific in what do you really specialize in. I can tell you, I don't do perms, right? So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, I do perms. No, that's not my money maker. I'm going to tell you what I'm best at so I can help that person, achieve those best results. We're all good at a lot of things, but which one are we the best at? I think that's what would help each individual.
Do y'all have a member in your chapter, the Rainmakers chapter, who does perms?
No, we don't.
Would you be open to the idea of a new member who comes in and says, I do perms?
Absolutely. Because I don't feel, first of all, I always think that there's enough people in this world for us to take care of, to split amongst each other. So yeah, if I don't do a service, I'm okay with that person coming in to do perms. And if that person does overlap with some of the things we do, at the end of the day, I feel like the person will choose who they're most comfortable with. So again, to me, it's not a threat, even if we did overlap some things together.
Yeah, and overlap is really, really common. And, I feel like in this arbitrary example we're given, of somebody coming into your chapter and doing perms, well, they likely do overlap with you, but there's still some differentiators there. There's still some unique selling propositions. There's probably going to be some opportunities where you may have a client or a prospect that's a better fit for the other person, the one who does
Correct.
perms, and she or he may likewise, they might have somebody that says, I'm really struggling with trying to get there before you close at 6 o'clock. Well, they might be able to say, oh, well, let me give you to Georgia. Let me have Georgia call you. She works later,
Right.
and so I can see how that type of thing. So what we would like to suggest or offer to our members is this idea of abundance versus scarcity.
Correct.
Yeah, where, hey, there's plenty of business to go around, and the more focused that a member can be, choose that one thing that they put on their BNI application. If it's
Yes.
hair color or haircuts, right? Or just hair. Choose that one thing and stay on it.
Right.
Week after week after week, you stay in that specialty, stay in your lane, and that's going to be even more productive than saying, we do all of these. We do hair, we do eyelashes, and we do
extensions, and we do, you name it. It keeps
and
going.
nails, and pedicures, and tattoos, and piercings. And you see how. So I really hope that we can educate our members to the value of seeing abundance versus scarcity and being specific.
Yes.
That it's the being specific part that's going to bring you more business. And then by being specific, that allows opportunity for more members to come into your chapter. And these members are going to be bringing more referrals and more connections and more visitors. And who knows, maybe someday soon we might have a large chapter like that in the Knoxville area. You mentioned some of the things that they do there. They charge their guests because there was food involved. I would imagine that they probably met at a larger facility of some kind.
Yes.
I don't know if it was like a 5-star hotel, but these are some of the ideas that we would have to change with, the paradigm that would have to shift among some of our chapters in looking at abundance versus scarcity to say, the room that we're in right now, my goodness, it could barely hold 5 more members, much less doubling in size.
Right.
Sometimes we may have to step out there and find a better meeting place, and there are challenges behind that always, but that's really cool. So we didn't really talk much about you being a BNI Director Consultant. How did you happen to get into that position?
Well, I was approached by Dan Rawls at the time with another member in our chapter, and I was at Legacy. And there was he was curious if I was interested, and I said, sure. I love what BNI has done for me, and I would love to give back in any way I could. And so I went to a couple meetings. I liked what I saw. I was just, warming up to kind of what DCs do. And then he had a formal training that came to town, and so became part of that. And my first real experience was helping him grow a chapter. I was there really just to kind of assist, learn, understand how it works. And I learned quite a bit. It was definitely different than, I didn't understand how chapters started, and it was an eye-opener. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Yeah, that's cool. What kind of benefits has your business received, or even you personally, from being on the regional team?
Of course, for me, it gives me more visibility, so I'm able to help more people. So I'm able to connect more people to either clients or friends or even members within chapters. So I loved being able to do that, because you can see how the community just grows with more benefits. Of course, for me, it's also helped me, I've had more clients because of it. right? It isn't just one chapter that I've had clients that come and see me.
Yeah.
So, and it's created more relationships, and that's something that I value. I know that I'm a person that needs to be around people, so I get to not only be around people but learn from the very best, and that's been great for me.
Yeah, well, we love having you on the team. Let's look at the calendar together here for a minute.
Sure.
I'm gonna switch over to the calendar, and in March the 11th we have Member Success Program, and that's at Tennessee State Bank here in Knoxville. And
Great.
we encourage all of our members to attend at least once a year, and of course, new members need to satisfy your member success program requirements within the first 60 days of membership. And again, you can do that online at BNI University, but we really like it when you do it in person, because then you get to network with members from other chapters. And we almost always, if not always, see members passing referrals at Member Success Program, making real connections. So we'd love to see you there. Don't forget to register on the website. Go to bniknox.com and click on the calendar tab, and then look for that on March the 11th. Then we have the Schmoozapalooza on March the 12th, and this is the Knoxville Chamber of Commerce big networking event. They do these a couple of times a year, and the BNI Knoxville is going to have a booth or a table. We've been making plans to maximize our impact at that event. And listen, we'd love to have BNI members come by the table and chat with us and help us to promote the message. And we are specifically focused this year at Schmoozapalooza to inviting people to visit a chapter. So we don't want to just show up and say, "Oh, BNI is great. BNI is great. You ever heard of BNI?" Yeah, we're going to show up with an intent. A purpose is to get people to visit BNI chapter, and we're actually going to we're going to have a giveaway. We're finalizing that at this time as to what the giveaway is, but there will be a giveaway for people who visit a BNI chapter within a certain time frame from Schmoozapalooza. So we're really excited about that. We want to remind you that Member Extravaganza 2019 is swiftly approaching. That period goes from April the 1st until May the 31st. And we, of course, will have the cruise to the Bahamas with Dr. Ivan Meisner and probably a couple of hundred BNI members from across the country, all on the same cruise. And that'll be very exciting. Be looking for more details and information from your director consultant on that. And by the way, chapter leadership, let's get your visitor day on the calendar for Member Extravaganza, and we need 45 days advance notice to complete the system for visitor day. So now is the time to put your visitor day on the calendar if you haven't already done that. And again, see your director consultant about that. Georgia, it's been a joy having you on our podcast today. Was there anything in closing that you wanted to add?
I just want to thank you, Andy, and for all the members out there. Always reach up if you're not sure, because your membership has a lot to offer.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again. And this is Andy Brassfield, your Executive Director for the BNI Knoxville region, signing off. Until next time, y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.